mixed martial arts returns to the banks of the River Liffey this Friday night as Bellator 270 touches down at the Point Depot Arena in Dublin, Ireland for maybe the best card in years that we've seen here. In fact, it's the only card in years we've seen here in this part of the world, in Ireland. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com. And today is the Bellator 270 preview show from my beautiful home country of Ireland here. So we will look at all of the full card here from top to bottom, and maybe give you a little bit of insight into some of the undercard fighters maybe that you wouldn't know as well, and obviously break down the main event, the co-main event, and a few more fights as well. So let's get straight into it, and let's go from bottom to top here, as we tend to do, and look at some of the undercard fighters. So we have a few people here making their pro debuts. Obviously, some of the really good SPG people coming through, and more besides. And one of them, to start off with, is Darragh Kelly, who won the Irish Amateur Fighter of the Year with Severe MMA last year. So you know he's going to be very, very good. He moved to SPG a while ago. He was 9-0 as an amateur. He beat very good prospects, Constantine Blanchia and Solomon Simon, here coming out of Ireland in the amateurs. Really, really good fighters. And if you know you beat people like them, you're really, really good. And he's taken on Junior Morgan, who's 3-0 as a pro, won all of those inside the distance. His last one was by an illegal knee, but we get over that. And he's on a Manchester top team as well. There's a good few fighters actually out of Manchester top team on this card. I think there's 3 or 4, but we'll get to them as we go. If you don't know them, the likes of Kane Musa fights out of that gym, and Lerone Murphy, who we saw with a spectacular knockout of, you know, the I don't see former SPG or current SPG fighter, Bakwad Amir Kadi. I know it's hard to know these days when people can't get in and out of countries, but Lerone Murphy got that beautiful KO, and a lot of his team members are featured here on Friday night. Another one actually of these SPG versus Manchester top team matches is Steve Costello, who takes on Yusuf Nazokatov, Yusuf Nazokatov. My pronunciation of names is absolutely horrendous. But actually, shout out to my good friend Jake Smith over in the UK, who covers a lot of these guys really well. And I had a word with him about some of these guys, and he's saying a lot of the prospects. We'll get to a few more of them as well coming out of the UK. There's a few Welsh guys in this card. There's a few Scottish guys anyway in this card. There's a few English guys. Some really good. So it's not just the Irish prospects on this. There's some really good guys there. He's out of Manchester top team as well. Yusuf is making his pro debut, and Steve Costello also making his pro debut. He fought Ian Gary as an amateur. He won 2 fights at the IMAFs in 2019, so he came through that passage through that I suppose a lot of the Irish fighters are coming through at the moment. So looking forward. I suppose those Darragh Kelly and Steve Costello are the 2 kind of pro debuting fighters out of Ireland to look to on this undercard, and see if they will be, you know, maybe the next Ian Gary or the next Paul Hughes or the next James Gallagher or Kiefer Crosby, whoever that might be. One of the standouts as well on this undercard is Danni Neilan, who takes on Audrey Kerouche. Neilan is SPG as well. She's 4-0 as a pro. Last year, all 3 Irish pro women, Danni, Leah McCourt and Sinead Kavanagh, all went undefeated. So it's been a great time over the last while for WMMA, I suppose we would call it, in Ireland. For a long time it was just Aisling Daly, and she paved the way, and she did an absolutely fantastic job. And then we had the likes of Catherine Costigan coming out of Limerick, and other women as well did a great job. But these 3 at the moment, I don't know if we've ever had a batch as good. You know, obviously Sinead Kavanagh fighting, we'll talk more about that next week against Chris Cyborg, and the biggest fight ever for an Irish woman in a mixed martial arts fight as well. Now, we've had maybe a couple of bigger boxing ones, but this is it's absolutely huge. And Danni is paving the way as well. She fought in July, got an exemption to fight out of Bellator, went over and fought Katrina Delidza, who was 5-1 over in Germany against the German, and won that fight. So, you know, Danni she will take on all comers and beat them as well. Audrey, her opponent, 7-5 as a pro. Team Sorel over in France. Looking at the gym, not the biggest gym in the world. She has 4 wins by submission, 4 losses by submission. It's her Bellator. It's her Bellator. Actually, she's 6-6 here in Darragh. I'm looking again, yeah. But you know, it's one of them. I tried to look for some of her fights, and I couldn't really find much. A lot of those French fighters as well. Because MMA was only legal in France for, what is it, 2 years? You would know what they're on. It could be 10 years. You know what I mean? It's only recently legal in France. So there was a lot of mixed rules fights and stuff like that. And I'm not sure whether she had some or not, but it's very hard to find them. So it suggests that she might have had. But very experienced lady coming in here. And it'll be a big test for Danni again. But, you know, you'd expect her, I suppose, to pass it. She looks like a real good prospect coming through. One of the fighters I mentioned earlier as well, Bobby Pallett. Another gym that has a good few fighters linked here is Hamad Gym. It's in Liverpool. Bobby is a really top prospect coming through. He's 5-0 in his career. If I'm not mistaken, just check it here again. Yeah, I think he is, and he's one of these guys that's coming through in the UK and out of Wales, and he's going to be. I think he's going to be a name that a lot of the UK guys are talking about, and I suppose everyone else will start to talk about him in a while because he looks like a really good fighter. He's fighting Nicolo Solli, who's 3-1 out of SBG, 2-1 in Bellator. Lost to George Hardwick, even the king of Middlesbrough last time out. He's also fought in Bellator as well, and so that's a welterweight bout. That should be fun. Heavyweight bout then as well. You don't see too many heavyweight fights over here in Ireland, but we have Gokhan Sikkarim versus Rob Beach. Beach's out of that Hamad Gym as well, 5-2. He's 39 years of age, hasn't fought since 2018, and it's his Bellator debut. Where Sikkarim, his only loss is to the ranked heavyweight Steve Mowry. He's 1-1 in Bellator, so you'd be expecting Sikkarim to win this one, I suppose. I think he'd be a big favourite coming into this one. So, the kind of the unusual fight. Another one, light heavyweight. Lee Hardwick against Andruiskevicus. He's out a London shoot fighter, and I was once told whenever you hear an Eastern European sounding name coming out of London shoot fighters, you know that fighter is going to be brilliant. And he's 8 wins in a row at the moment. He beat the likes of James Mulhern in his Bellator debut, which was his last fight back in 2019. And, everyone in this scene knows Lee Chadwick. He's been around for years and years and years. 36-year-old veteran, former Cage Warriors champion. He beat the likes of Carl Pindred. He's fought Chris Fields, Jack Marshman, Fabian Edwards, Carl Moore. He won by submission his last fight a year ago in Bellator. So, he's doing well recently. And, one of the stalwarts, I suppose, of UK MMA and has been for a good while. Then we have a lightweight bout between Daniele Scatizzi, who fights out of SBG as well, against Brian Hooi. Hooi is Dutch, 16 and 7, I believe. He is 16 and 8, and Scatizzi 10 and 5. Scatizzi 2-1 in Bellator, guillotined Gavin Hughes in September in 2020, lost to Marvin Vettori back in the day as well. And on Venator, he's 5 wins by KO. And as I mentioned, Hooi is 5 KOs, 6 subs, 5 decisions. So it's hard to know what you're going to get from him, and he's 3 KOs, 3 subs and 2 decision losses. So, sometimes I look at the records and I think, well, okay, maybe he's a lot of knockout wins, maybe a lot of submission wins, maybe not a lot of knockout losses or decision. This guy hasn't. He just has a bit of everything, So you wouldn't know what you get from him. He's also kind of won every second fight since 2016. So yeah, I think for Scatizzi, who is 10-5 as well, similar sort of 50-50 or maybe what would I call it in America, 660 records, I suppose you would call it. 3 out of every 2. He's it's good matchmaking there. Then Ashley Reece as well out of that Hamad Gym as well in Liverpool. He's 2-1 in Bellator, lost his last one. He's 4 KOs against Luca, who's 6-1. Only loss was in his debut to Marbek Taisimov. It's his Bellator debut, 3 finishes in a row as well, so look forward to that one. Then Ilias Bulaid, who's been training out of SBG for a good while now. He's a kickboxer, and I suppose the kickboxing fans here would probably know him a lot better than me, but he's 2-0 as a pro. I saw him fight, I think maybe both of his fights, one of them anyway, in Dublin, and he's very, very exciting. His last fight was on Bellator Dublin in February 2020. And he's fighting George Sasu, who's out of French gym DNA fighters, who is Saladin Parnis, Yves Landau, Johnny Frenchy, Jean Ndai. So a really, really good gym there. He's 5-1 as a pro. 2 wins by submission, 2 wins by decision. So, really, it looks like a good prospect and looks like good matchmaking there as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one. The next Irish guy on the card, there's a long undercard here, as there tends to be. Now I'm recording this early in the week, so maybe by the time this happens there'll be weight cuts and everything. I think they're actually already quarantined. They've been quarantined since the weekend, so you never know when that happens. There could be a lot of people ordering in McDonald's into their hotel room and missing weight and stuff. You never know, but one of the best Irish prospects, I think, coming through as well is Ciaran Clarke. He's 3-0 out of SBG Ireland, all 3 fights in Bellator. He fought Magomedov in the IMAFs as an amateur. He beat Tobias Horilla as well as an amateur, who's a really, really, really good fighter. If anyone has seen him fighting Cage Warriors over the last while, I know he lost his last fight, if I'm not mistaken, but he is a killer. And I think they went 1-1. They fought each other a couple of times anyway, but Clarke definitely has a win over him at amateur. He beat John and Dye last time out, did Clarke, and he's fighting Jordan Barton, who's another one out of Manchester top team, that gym I mentioned earlier on, Lerone Murphy, another 6-1-1. He's fought, in some of the best promotions around Cage Warriors and FCC. If you don't know what the local promotion, they do absolutely great work over there. Lost to James Hindon decision, who's a very good fighter, and he beat Manny Akpan in the amateurs. And anyone who listens to any of my podcasts, whenever I talk about Cage Warriors, knows I'm a big fan of Manny Akpan. So that's a good win for him there. So we get then to the main card, or the top of the main card anyway, I suppose, with Peter Queally in the main event against Patricky Fahey, with Patchy Mix against James Gallagher, Daniel Weichel against Pedro Keir Harvey versus Acela Jew. I believe that fight is off, if I'm not mistaken, but that would have been a fun one. I believe it's off, but we'll wait and I suppose see on that one. So we will get to the top few fights now and discuss them more in detail. And let's start with Daniel Weichel versus Pedro Carvalho. Obviously Carvalho fought against Patricio Pitbull recently for the title. That didn't go too well, but having watched him kind of preparing for that fight, you can see what kind of a fighter he is. I suppose pretty easy, lots of output, throws lots of high kicks, pressure, maybe even too much pressure at times, ends up getting him taken down, but he defends very well on the ground. He bides his time, fighting out of the southpaw position. He's very, very, very tricky for a lot of guys. Lost his last 2 after 6 wins in a row. Lost to obviously Patricio and JJ Wilson as well, who's a top prospect, so no shame in either of those. Whereas Weichel, he does everything with power, And it's funny, I was looking through his record. He's 22 wins, but only 5 by KO for a guy who kind of throws so much power. And he's been around for ages as well. He fought Dan Hardy all the way back in 2008. His wins over, Moore, Saul Rogers, Georgi Karkanyan. He's a very good fighter. But as I said, watching him, he spams those right hands with power single legs, power, and his whole game is about power. Some people are about finesse, some people are about output, like Pedro, I would think a lot. This man is about power. So if Pedro can avoid the power punches, and if he can avoid maybe the power takedowns as well, I would suggest even more. I think he's onto maybe a winner here, but it's very hard to avoid that, and that it'll take a very, very good game plan, I think, from Pedro Carvalho to win this. Obviously, he's fighting out of SBG Ireland as well, a Portuguese fighter, but he has come over here and he's kind of made Ireland his home. I think, having looked at the odds, I think Weichel is a slight favourite here, and I suppose that is the right betting line, I think, right now. But Carvalho, a big thing as well. And I suppose I should have mentioned it, and I suppose it's a good time to mention it, just kind of the start of the main card here, looking at it, or the big 3 anyway. the Irish contingent here, and I would put Pedro into that because we've seen people in the past, the likes of Gunny Nelson and everything like that, who are known SPG fighters and Irish associated fighters. The pop that they will get, the crowd that will be behind them will be insane. So the regulations in Ireland basically to allow events like this only ended a couple of days ago. This is literally one of the first big events in the Tree Arena in Ireland. We really only have one arena in the whole country this size that can fit indoors. You know, I think with Bellator and with the cage and everything like that, and with all seated, I think it's 9,000. With standing, they can take out seats. I think it goes up to 11 or something like that, or maybe a little bit more. But this is one of the first events, and people are going to be mad to just get out the house, you know, or haven't been to an event literally since the last time Bellator was here. I remember when all of this was announced, when it started the lockdowns and all, I was at Bellator. And I was outside the Tree Arena, and I remember hearing it on the radio in a shop there. It's like, oh, the coronavirus has come to Ireland. So it's literally been Bellator to Bellator, I feel like, for the events in that arena. And that is going to lead to an insane crowd. You know, that is going to lead to do you know what I'd love to be? I'd love to be the first Irish fighter tonight here, to be honest, because they are going to get roared to victory more than likely, you know, and it's going to be the same for the likes of Pedro, and we will get to James Gallagher and Peter Queally for a second, but to finish on the Pedro Weichel fight, this could be a fight of the night, I think. You know, if Pedro kind of rises to the level where he's fought before to get, you know, towards the fights with Patricio, and he's won some big fights in Bellator, I think he could be a good matchup for Weichel in terms of a fun fight. The winner, I maybe I won't predict that right now. Maybe I'll leave that for the betting show. But it'll be a fun fight, is my prediction for that one. Then I suppose maybe for a lot of people, the funnest fight of the night is James Gallagher, the Strabanimal, the Tyrone man, against Patrick Patchy Mix in the bantamweight division, which looks like, you know, with the bantamweight title up for grabs, Kyoji Haraguchi is fighting the champion Sergio Perez. When is that? Towards the end of the year, or maybe early next year? But that match has been made anyway. This could be the number one contender, but, you know, really could. Gallagher has been, you know, there or thereabouts for a long time, looking for a big fight, and he had injuries, and that Cal Eleanor fight just dragged on for years, it seemed like. But I think it was like a year or 9 months at one stage. But yeah, look, this fight, it has been a long time in the making, I suppose, and it's a very fun fight. I think they're two very similar fighters in terms of their end product, if maybe not their approach. I think Mix is very much a grapple first fighter. He takes the back so well. I wouldn't say he's the quickest or most athletic fighter in the world, but he throws some lovely hook striking, which leaves himself a little bit open. But he's happy enough to do that, I think, because the more open he is, if someone comes in and tries to, you know, to get inside, he can catch him and put him on the ground. He picks his times to go for he picks his times to go for a takedown when someone has their back against the cage, and he likes to push him against the cage and take him down through there. Throws the front kick up through the middle sometimes to keep his distance as well. But he does, the one issue I would say for him, he gets drawn into striking a little bit too much, and he had a little bit of trouble against Arculeta as well, obviously finding out a southpaw position like that. Whereas James, I think his injuries, look, we talk about James Gallagher. Look, what we've seen of James Gallagher over the last few years has been wrestling, takedowns, submissions. It's funny that there isn't too much tape on maybe the modern James Gallagher, the post Ricky Bandejas James Gallagher against good people or high level people. You know, we've seen the fights with Chinzo Machida, and there's another fight as well where he went 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, that I watched. This is the second time I forgot he's there, but anyway, it's James Gallagher's striking maybe isn't as bad as maybe people make out due to the fight where he lost, where he got knocked out, the lad I just mentioned, whose name I can't remember, Ricky Bandejas. Also, he's with James Krause right now, and he has been over in America training for the last, I don't know, maybe year or so, and I'd be very, very interested to see the adjustments he's made, not just in his ability, but in his style, because you watch James Gallagher, one time he comes out, you know, with the hands up high against Bandejas. Another fights then, he comes out in the karate stance, hands low, throwing kicks and stuff. So James Gallagher has a few different styles. I'd be interested to see what style, I suppose, James Krause has him in. But as I say, the tape on him, as a James Krause fighter is nil. And even as like kind of the last few years of James Gallagher, there's very little on him as well because fights have ended so quickly. But what we do see in him is, I spoke about patchy mix there, and he picks his time to get the takedowns, but it's more about power takedowns than anything else, or like double legs against the cage or single legs against the cage. I think James Gallagher is one of the smartest takedown artists in MMA, to be honest. Like, sometimes because James Gallagher is such a big character and people don't really look at his game, I think that's the best part of his game, to be honest. His ability to take someone down with, like, I think it was the Callan, or no, it wasn't the Callan fight, it was the, was it Roman Salazar fight, where he kicked him. James Gallagher caught the underside of his leg. There's a beautiful picture of it out there. Maybe we'll be able to find it. But he picked the underside of his leg and got the takedown by catching onto basically the bottom half of his calf and took him down like that. James Gallagher's takedowns are just really good. Really, really good. And once he gets to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is absolutely fantastic. On the feet, look, I think he's a good jab. He's a fast striker. I think his defensive ability in past fights, right down through the middle, has been an issue. When he boxes out of that straight up boxing stance and throws that kind of the backhand uppercut, as we saw with Magomed Kerimov last week, that can lead to you getting hurt badly. I think that's fine in boxing at times, but in MMA with so many weapons where you can kind of get in closer or even throw head kicks or front kicks right down through the middle, I don't think that's the best weapon in the world. McGregor has thrown that, and even the front hand uppercut as well, and it's worked well for him at times, but at other times he's kind of gotten caught with it. It worked well for him, really well for him against Eddie Alvarez, but then against Nate Diaz it didn't work so well. So I think for James Gallagher, he's better off staying away from maybe stuff like that. But I'm also, like, the biggest thing for me in this fight is seeing what James looks like after his time with James Krause. And we'll talk more about that fight tomorrow in the betting show when that goes up, because I have a few more thoughts on it, but I will leave that for them because it gets into who I think will win and lose it. But a fun fight, a really, really fun fight, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And in the main event, Patricky Pitbull coming over from Brazil to take on Waterford's own Peter Queally. So there's no Dubliner here in the main card. I suppose the three Irish guys are from Portugal, Tyrone and Waterford, which is all different parts of the world and the country, I suppose. But it's great to see different parts of Ireland being showcased, I suppose, here. But for Peter Queally and Patricky Pitbull, I went back and watched the first fight, and coming out of that first fight, I think a lot of people thought, oh, maybe Queally got maybe a little bit lucky, or the referee, or the doctor maybe stopped it a bit earlier or something. But having gone back and watched it, Queally was winning that fight. I thought Queally was the better fighter in that. Now, that doesn't mean to say Patricky won't come out and be the better fighter here or make adjustments or win this fight. But I think Peter Queally's performance in that fight was criminally underrated. I think he deserves a lot more credit for that. Even when Patricky took him down, Peter Queally won that portion of the fight. He was elbowing him. He cut him up. I think there was 2 different or 3 different cuts, maybe even on the top of his head from those elbows that Queally landed. He did a great job there. He did a great job of pushing the pace. He did a great job of landing his jab, and he just had a phenomenal performance. I spoke to Peter the other day. It'll probably be out by the time this comes out, I would say, on Sherdog's YouTube, so check it out there. But what he said to me was that he never really expected to get to maybe this level, and maybe a lot of people didn't expect him to get to this level. And then when he did get to this level, we were like kind of half denying it, ourselves. Well, he didn't say that now, but maybe I kind of added that bit in. But, he really believes in his athleticism as a fighter and his ability to push a pace. And he told me he's going to push that same pace for 5 rounds here. So that's going to be very interesting. And you look at Patricky's side of it then, for him in the first fight, he hit Peter a good few times in that second round. A lot of people thought the first round was closer than the second round, but watching it back, I don't know. I thought maybe it was, but I thought Patricky did better work in the second round at times, just kind of landing his shots. But what we could see in the first round was all leg kicks. That is the key, I think, for both of them kind of coming in here. If Peter Queally can stop those leg kicks from landing or check them, he's on to a winner here. If Patricky can land them over and over and over, it's going to be very tough for Peter Queally to withstand him for 5 rounds. The takedowns are another thing, as I mentioned there. Patricky was able to get him down twice. He wasn't on the ground for that long because it was near the end of the rounds, I think, both time. But Peter Queally was kind of winning that on the ground. But that won't last forever. You know, if Patricky gets a takedown towards the start of the round, even if Peter lands a few shots, maybe Patricky can move in, stop those shots from coming in, kind of take over there. So that's another key, I think, to this fight. But if Peter Queally can push the base, you know, and stop the takedown and stop the leg kicks, he, as I use the phrase, onto a winner. I think he could be onto a winner here again. But the problem here is the Irish fighters have lots of tough fights. You know, even if you look at the top three, the Carvalho against Weichel. Look, Weichel could win that. Carvalho could win it, but Weichel could win it. Mix could win it against Gallagher. Patricky could win it against Queally. And then what are the crowd like? You know, what's that atmosphere going to be like? It could be, you know, it could be pretty downtrodden, or it could be extremely happy. You know, we all think back to UFC Dublin when Conor McGregor fought Diego Brandão. And wasn't Neil Sear in that card? I'm not sure. But the 5 Irish guys, he was, I think. Gunny Nelson, Norman Park, and whoever was Aisling Daly. No, Paddy Hoolan was definitely the first one. Aisling Daly was in the Tough House, I think, at that time. But anyway, it was mayhem. All of them won, and it was insane. Carl Bender as well. How could I forget that? Well, one of the greatest comebacks in the history of the UFC. You know, Peter Queally had another one, I suppose, against Ryan Scope, but it could go the other way. It really could go the other way. I suppose we will see. But the big thing here as well, I think, this is for the lightweight championship. You know, as I mentioned, 5 rounds. The Bellator main events aren't switching till 5 rounds at the end of the year, but obviously the championship fights are there. And as an Irishman, you know, going to a fight here in my own country, it's great to see a title fight on it. You know, we've seen, you know, Cage Warriors ones and titles on the line and stuff like that back in the day. But to see, you know, a big Bellator title fight with an Irish guy who's come through, it's going to be huge. And, you know, even to see the likes of Patricky Pitbull as well, a very good fighter, to see the likes of Patchy Mix fighting in Ireland, it's something we really haven't experienced since I suppose McGregor versus Brandão. You know, we haven't had the very top level fighters at the top of their game. You know, we were supposed to have a Stipe Miocic fight here before he became champion and stuff like that. That fell out, and we were supposed to have Poirier and Duffy as well, but that fell out. So we missed out on a few of them. We had Darren Till, and we had a few good fighters here, no doubt about it. But this is a huge fight. You know, this fight, Patricky Pitbull versus Peter Queally and Sinead Kavanagh versus Chris Cyborg next week, are the 2 biggest fights not containing, you know, Conor McGregor. They're absolutely massive fights, and I'm looking forward to both of them, and I'm especially looking forward to Bellator 270. Patricky Pitbull taking on Peter Queally for the lightweight championship. James Gallagher taking on Patchy Mix in the bantamweight division. Going to be absolutely brilliant, and lots more as well. I will leave it at that. Thanks everyone for listening. Check me out all week. I'll be above at Dublin. You know, if you see me around, say hello. And thank you very much for watching and listening. We'll see you all